Who would you take in their prime? Robin van Persie, Didier Drogba, or Fernando Torres? Now, the way I like to frame these debates is a World Cup final for 90 minutes. They start for Team X in a World Cup final, Champions League final.
If that's the criteria, then there is only one winner here.
Do you think?
It's a final.
If that's the criteria, then the answer is Drogba.
Because it has to be that. Otherwise, it gets into season
No, because I think you
what
could
club
go. I
they
think
play
you could
for,
go
what
like
league.
over the course of a
striker
season or whatever.
in their pomp,
Yeah,
at their peak, out of those.
it's hard, isn't it?
I'm very tempted to say Torres.
It is Torres.
I think it's Torres.
Torres at Liverpool it was. But if you're doing your criteria,
A World
who
Cup
plays
final,
in a
Cup
final?
Van Persie
The
in
answer
2013 is
in a final to play in a final. The answer is Drogba.
It has to be.
Yeah.
How many goals did he score in cup finals? Do you know?
9 in 9, wasn't it?
9 in 9.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did a lot.
But
Scored one against us in the first final at
Don't
Wembley.
forget Thierry Henry scored
Lifted it over
0 cup finals. In 0 cup finals. Obviously, I can't belittle what a career he had, but it's hard to actually score in cup finals.
You see, I think sometimes you can go too far with that because he played in finals where his team still won. And I think that's the important thing. Like with Wayne Rooney, for example, when we won the final in 08 against Chelsea, he was vitally important. He didn't score.
Yeah.
We lost
Yeah.
in 11, I think.
I think
it was,
the
and he
Henry
scored.
debate
Do you know what I
comes
mean?
back-
So it's like
yeah.
you can score and it doesn't matter.
But the Henry debate
Sometimes.
comes back around a little bit because of how good he was for Arsenal, and then he goes into that Champions League final where he was ineffectual against
For me,
Barcelona.
yeah, and this is something, I don't know if it's nostalgia or whatever, but you know the way I look at footballers now, and like for Haaland, example, he could score 60 goals this season, and I would never hold him in the same regard as Henry. You know, like there's some
I think
players
you're
that
right.
are just.
I think
You see
you're right.
Wayne Rooney, you see Van Nistelrooy, you see some of these players. Like you could score 100 goals this season.
Yeah.
I don't care, bro. It's
I
cool.
think the systems of
I just think
football are
football's
getting more
changed too
advanced.
much.
I think I think the system of football of understanding how to get the ball into the back of net is a lot more mechanical. So I think Henry had to do things individualistically as an artist, to do things creatively, to create goals out of nothing. So 100%, I agree with you.
But
I think
if
we're in the
you're
lowest
doing a
point of football
final-
for years. I think the standard of football in terms of individual footballers, it's a bit like you know Kevin Keegan won a Ballon d'Or,
yeah.
but he's never considered the best of all time. There
It
are
was at
peaks-
Hamburg when he won
there,
that, right?
Yeah, there are peaks and troughs in football where, you know, Maradona, and then it goes down a little bit in terms of, I think we're in a real low point in terms of the quality of football. I thought the World Cup was actually really average in terms of the quality. That's my opinion.
I think your opinion for that comes from nowadays coaching is much more important. So therefore individuals are less
Brighton,
important.
We've just seen the
Brentford.
best player to have ever existed win a World Cup.
No, but he was still an important part of a team as well.
Yeah,
There was
of course.
that Barcelona team was also built around getting the best out of Messi, and he obviously was still a massive part of that and became a part of the team. But there were times where he didn't have to move. Do you know what I mean?
I'm trying
Like,
to say, like,
where they were built around him. Same with Real Madrid.
No, the
Is
days
there
of
any-
Maverick
for
footballers,
Ronaldo.
Are now frowned upon. So, for example, in the
'cause it's about
previous
the
era,
team.
Jack Grealish would have been far more mercurial and far more encouraged to be as free flowing as he'd want to be. Whereas I think now, particularly at City, who are the best team in the world, whether they win the league or not, they are the best collection of players. It's so regimented. It's so specific. Your role.
Again, it's down to coaching, and that's what I think. I think
Yeah.
because managers have almost become more important, the most important member of the team, the individuals aren't as important.
But do you think
you'll
that
find
changes? Is there a
individuals
cycle?
individuals succeed and
Yeah.
shine where the team isn't
Yeah.
as good,
And do you think,
or
do you
isn't-
think
or
that'll
the
be
manager
found
isn't
out?
as good?
Maybe that gets found out in 10 years where we get a Ronaldinho 2.0. We get a whole plethora of players where
No,
the
because you're
Matic is
always
this
going to have
world that-
anomalies. You're always going to have
Yeah.
Erling Haaland who wins a game for you.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
where the coaching doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're always going to have a Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi who can win the game.
I don't know
and drop
why
it
you'd
back.
ever want
Yeah.
to discourage that as well. Like, I don't know why it would ever be in your interest
Yeah,
as
you
a football
shouldn't.
manager to discourage that mercurial, unpredictable
I think in
talent.
England that gets
Guardiola
coached
did it
out, yeah.
famously. He did it with Henri. He did it with David Villa. He did it with Zlatan because it does make you a worse side. And we've
And in
had these
England, we
debates
get
with
told
Haaland.
keep it simple, and
Yeah.
it's like sometimes that takes away you getting to be able to play on the ball, hold the ball, do things, and then that takes away from you as an individual.
I think it's
it detracts from
ridiculous
the
though,
sport.
and I think it makes the sport less rich, not financially, culturally rich. Like nullifying or clipping the wings of a player like Jack Grealish is a good example. Like Jack Grealish could be so much better than he is, I believe.
Yeah.
You know the way that Matt Letizia would play. Like Matt Letizia wasn't really involved, and he picked the ball out, he scored the most sensational goal that you'll ever see. I think Jack Grealish has that ability, but he'll never do that because he's supposed to lay it into De Bruyne's feet.
He's meant to give 3 goals away instead of the one
It was
special
like
one
what
that you're
Pep
talking
said the
about.
other day, wasn't it? When he came out and said, why you always keep talking about Grealish is doing what I want him to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
And
he
it's
loves
like-
that. He loves that.
You all right? You're not getting the 10 goals, 10 assists that he was getting at Villa or whatever, but he's doing something for the manager.
But he's not doing what he does. What he would do most naturally, he's not being encouraged to do.
It's like with forwards.
Yeah.
It's like, look, I think I try and have this conversation with United fans about Martial sometimes. And like he gets criticised when he didn't score against City. But then if you look at the performance of United in the first half and the second half, were completely different. Firmino at Liverpool scored less goals than a traditional number 9, but was lauded massively because it was all about the team. It's not about individuals anymore. It's about
United fans go on about Martial too.
no, but no, I was
I know-
exaggerating
no,
the point to make
I
a
know
point.
what you mean, yeah.
I was trying to just make a point.
I think it's almost like the tennis shout with Djokovic and Federer. Djokovic has got a better record than Federer now in terms of Grand Slams. And this is my perception of what tennis is about. Federer is a tennis player. Djokovic is a robotic winner. I think there's a big difference. I think Federer, for me, will always be the greatest tennis player of all time. I haven't got the most extensive knowledge, but in terms of what he brought to the sport when I watch it, but Djokovic got a better record. So, do you know what I'm trying to say? I feel like
I
some
will
footballers are footballers.
always find the beauty in the Maverick. I will always identify more with.
I'd prefer a Rooney to a Kane.
Yeah,
Always.
Gascoigne.
And I also like the stories that go with football. Like one of my favourite stories about a player that nobody would ever heard of, a guy called Robin Friday, who was like the best, but circumstance and drinking and girls and whatever. But he was the kind of player that would pick the ball up on the halfway line, beat 3 and then score. But then go on a bender for 2 days. Like that. And I know that isn't sort of in keeping with the game. I know that isn't what you're supposed to be.
You know how people kind of, when we talk about footballers, and it's hard to compare generations because the generations are so different. But you know when people go, he would never have survived back then. So like, can you imagine like George Best now or Maradona now with the pitches and the training and the coaching and the food, the food.
The head right, even their head right, the mental health and all that.
But then it's like, that comes down to the individual, doesn't it? And they could have still been the same people with the same flaws and the same...
No, because I think culturally it's also different now. So Gazza's a good example here. Gazza was, and footballers at the time, they were encouraged to drink. They weren't now smoking or drinking as a footballer would be incredibly frowned upon. Whereas very recently, like I remember, I think it's in Tony Adams' book, which I read. I think it's called Addicted.
Funny enough.
he talks about the cultural difference between the French players that arrived at Arsenal. You remember when it was like Gilles Grimandi and all those boys that arrived? When they arrived, they were baffled by the English players because they were like, it's disgraceful, these English boys. They're all in the pub. You know, the Tuesday Club, the Arsenal Tuesday Club. They're all in the pub. And the Arsenal English boys, they were looking at these French players and they're like, these guys are unbelievable. They're all smoking.
Must be like, have you seen Talladega Nights?
No.
Ricky Bobby when Sacha Baron Cohen's in it. I forgot his character name. And he turns up. It's a French racer in America. Anyway, if you haven't watched it, it don't make sense. But yeah, I hear you.
But I think that like George Best then was encouraged. It was the culture to go out boozing. You'd win a game, you'd go coach, you'd go training.
When you take that natural ability of a Best, a Maradona, and then you consider they were getting knee-high challenges. I know these are all cliches and stuff. The pitches were cut up, you know. But then nowadays they're playing 60, 70 games.
Yeah,
George
exactly.
Best,
So you know what I
George
mean? You
Best
can't
would
even
be the
afford
best
to go to the
footballer
pub.
in the world by a country mile right.
Yeah.
Maybe not Messi, but him and Messi. George Best would be the best footballer in the world by a country mile.
I agree.
I believe that in my heart. Maybe it's romantic.
And all of those players would though.
So
I think all of those, all of that.
Maradona is at his best is better than Messi at his best.
No, because Messi's so good, it's era defining. He would have been the same player in the 60s, 70s, 80s. It doesn't matter. He's total football for me. He's done everything. He can score a goal. He's got the best goal records
So what
in the
you're
history
saying
of
is
football.
the
passer,
best and the
dribbler.
Messis and all
Yeah,
that.
and I think George Best fits into any. He's that good in my opinion. Zidane's the same, and Pele. Yeah, for me, it's those 5 or 6. Cruyff is a good example. I think